comes to the involvement of President-elect Trump's team, it has been absolutely critical in getting this deal over the line. And it's been critical because, obviously, as I stand here today, this administration's term in office will expire in 5 days. I don't know if it's unprecedented to have envoys from an outgoing and an incoming administration sitting at the same table negotiating a ceasefire agreement of this kind. But if it's not unprecedented, it's certainly unusual. And we, of course, thank the Trump team for working with this on this ceasefire agreement. We think it's important that they were at the table.
All right, guys, this is breaking news as of today. It appears that the war between Israel and Hamas is finally coming to an end because, believe it or not, some people thought it would never happen. We finally got a ceasefire in Gaza. And I think regardless of whatever side of the conflict you stand on, and it's very divisive to a lot of people, we should all be able to mutually agree that the end of the bloodshed, this war has been very devastating. The ending of the loss of human life is something that we can all basically come together and celebrate. But with that said, I think it is objectively true that there is one person to thank for this, and that is the incoming president, obviously, our boy, Donald J. Trump. That is a take that Joe Biden currently is strongly disagreeing with. There's this giant political debate over who really brought about the end of the war with Israel. Is it Biden? Is it Trump? Is it something in between? We're going to explain in today's video why I think it is solely based on the fact that Trump is about to come into office and sort of debunk some of the pro-Biden talking points in this regard. But first, folks, do us a big favor. Make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe if you are new. Let's hit our goal, okay? Our original goal before I, preemptively and arrogantly tried to change it, of hitting 400,000 subs before Trump's inauguration. We're almost there. It'd be greatly appreciated if you would hit that red button. With that said, let's really quickly first explain basically what is going on here. So today it was announced that Israel and Hamas would reach an agreement to release the hostages, and that includes the American hostages that are currently being held by Hamas. The Palestinians will also be allowed under this three-part agreement to return to their homes or whatever is left of their homes in Gaza. And for now, again, it appears that this war is going to be coming to an end, and the proxy conflict, and this is a good thing I think as well, the proxy war that was going on here between the US and Iran just got de-escalated, because that was a major concern I had about the next several years, is that if this war that Israel is fighting continues to escalate and more people continue to get involved and it becomes more and more controversial, eventually this could see a point where the US is dragged into a war with Iran. That is something we want to avoid. I think that would be like the Iraq War 2.0. It'd be a major mistake. It'd be a blunder. So for now, we are not going down that rabbit hole. And apparently, guys, this is very interesting. This ceasefire deal is supposed to take effect on January 19th, which is literally the day right before Donald Trump gets inaugurated. But of course, what are we being told by Biden and his defenders? This was because of Joe Biden. It's a total coincidence that the deal is taking effect the day before Donald Trump takes office.
Thank you.
Folks, credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's not a joke. It's Trump. It's because of Trump, obviously. And if you disagree with that, then hear out my argument, and I'd really like to see anyone try to rebut this, because it's like, okay, first and foremost, let's start with the obvious. Why is it that this deal is being reached now? Okay, is it just a total coincidence that before the election, nothing was happening? Like, Biden could not get these negotiations to go anywhere, and then suddenly, right before Trump is being inaugurated, the deal suddenly is working and everyone agreed to it. Obviously, that has something to do with the fact that they don't want to deal with the incoming administration. They want to get this war done before the leadership changes in America, because the situation's going to change. And on top of that, I would point out that, do you also think it's really a coincidence that 1 week ago, right before this, Trump said, and I quote, "There will be all hell to pay," right? All hell will break out if the hostages are not released by the time that Trump gets back into office.
If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. Can you elaborate? And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is.
Yeah, but you mean to tell me that it was all Joe Biden who did this, right? Joe Biden's really the one who got it done. But I think the most compelling argument as to why this really has very little to do with Joe Biden is the fact that the original Biden ceasefire deal was what was finally agreed to here by Israel and Hamas. And of course, you may be saying, well, if it was Biden's deal, and if Biden's obviously the president who negotiated it, how could you possibly say that proves it had nothing to do with Joe Biden? Guys, that is because this original ceasefire deal that they're now finally agreeing to was introduced by Joe Biden on May 31st, 2024. So my question is, if it's really Joe Biden who negotiated this, and this is all happening because of him, why did it take so long? How come back in May or June or July or August or September or November or December even, right, of last year, did Joe Biden not succeed, but finally Israel and Hamas are agreeing to literally his original ceasefire proposal? And look, guys, let's keep this in mind as well. It's not exactly like Biden kind of threw this out there and didn't care about it. If you remember back to some of the issues that defined the 2024 election, Biden had a lot to gain politically from trying to get this war resolved before the election, right? Because if you'll remember, a big issue he was facing was the Pro Palestine activists on the left who were boycotting him. They were saying that the, quote, genocide in Gaza was his fault, right? They were calling him Genocide Joe.
Without the truth, there's no light. Without light, there's no path from this darkness.
If you really care about the lives lost here, then you should honor the lives lost and call for a ceasefire in Palestine. Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
That's all right. That's all right. That's all right.
Make no mistake about it, Biden had everything politically to gain, as well as, like, you know, again, if it was his deal and it really was because of him, he would have gotten it done anyway from resolving this beforehand. So that's why I say, once again, it should not be seen as a coincidence that this is finally only being agreed on when Trump is about to come into office. By the way, here's what Donald Trump had to say about it. He says, we have a deal for the hostages in the Middle East. They will be released shortly. Thank you. And by the way, on December 2nd, 2024, here was him going on a long rant about how there will be all hell to pay in the Middle East. Release the hostages now. But guys, if you don't want to take my word for it, if you're not really buying my arguments in this regard, I think the strongest case as to why this has everything to do with Donald Trump doesn't come from me. It doesn't come from Trump. It comes from Joe Biden's own State Department officials who are directly contradicting him here and admitting they actually thanked the incoming Trump administration for playing a large role in their eyes as to why this deal was finally agreed upon. Again, don't take my word for it. Take the words of the Biden administration on this very debate.
When it comes to the involvement of President-elect Trump's team, it has been absolutely critical in getting this deal over the line. And it's been critical because, obviously, as I stand here today, this administration's term in office will expire in 5 days. And one of the things that we have always said about this deal is that when you get from stage 1 to stage 2, that the United States, Egypt, and Qatar are the guarantors of this deal. And Egypt and Qatar will push Hamas to stay at the bargaining table and to get from stage 1 to stage 2, and the United States will push Israel to stay at the bargaining table to get from phase 1 and phase 2. So obviously those are promises we cannot make on behalf of the United States for any longer than the next 5 days. And so it's critical that all of the parties to the agreement and the other mediators see that when the United States is in the room making commitments, those are lasting commitments that extend beyond this administration into the next one. I would just say, lastly, I don't know if it's unprecedented to have envoys from an outgoing and an incoming administration sitting at the same table negotiating a ceasefire agreement of this kind. But if it's not unprecedented, it's certainly unusual. And we, of course, thank the Trump team for working with this on this ceasefire agreement. We think it's important that they were at the table.
Yeah, so again, don't take my word for it. Take the Biden State Department's word for it. And another telling key detail there is, finally, this was only agreed upon because of what? Because Biden's people were now negotiating alongside Trump's incoming state officials and diplomats and all of that. And then suddenly this deal gets done. Really? But you're still going to stand there and try to argue to me that this was all because of Joe Biden, and that's certainly why he failed to get it done back when he was trying to get it done for obvious political reasons. Yeah, it's nonsense. You know what it reminds me a lot of, honestly, is the debate around the Iranian hostage crisis, although I was not alive, obviously, but it does kind of remind you of that history, right? Where Jimmy Carter was trying to get the American embassy hostages out of Iran, send them back home for the entire year leading up to the 1980 election. He got absolutely nowhere, and then suddenly, right before Ronald Reagan took office and he was threatening to push back, do something about the Iranian hostage crisis, suddenly it's like, here you go, have your hostages back. But liberals and Democrat historians, etc., still to this day argue, no, it had nothing to do with Ronald Reagan. Of course it had something to do with the fact that the new administration was coming into office, much like this right here. As it turns out, who is in charge of America, who is running the leadership in this country, does make an impact on the rest of the world, believe it or not. And this is why a lot of people made the argument Trump needs to come back to office for the very sake of world peace, right? Forget domestic American issues. They are obviously important. But heck, you want to avoid nuclear war. You want to avoid World War III. One of the most compelling cases I thought Trump made to my generation, right, draft age males, is like, look, we need to rein this in. We need to keep America out of the reckless wars that got us to this position where a lot of people are so disaffected and stuff. So, but yeah, with that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. You know, who do you think really got this deal done? Or do you think it's a good deal? Do you think that, you know, one side should do more, etc.? Let me know. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.